Now, the word in Arabic for distraction is ilha, ilha'un, which means to pull somebody into lahu, to bring them into entertainment, which in the dictionary is the pleasurable occupation of the mind. So who's occupying your mind? Now, what you give your attention to will determine your reality. What you give your attention to will determine your reality. What does that mean? It means that if you're always watching news about crime, you're going to think that crime is far more prevalent than it actually is, and you will be scared. You'll be walking around thinking, like Chicken Little, that the sky is falling. So what you give your attention to is going to determine your reality. And what God is asking us is to give our attention to God. Now, what is in Arabic intention? What is the attention? Well, in English, it has a lot of really interesting meanings. One of them is courtesy. Like you say, he was very attentive to me. Attentions are what a lover gives their beloved. Attention is also a word for devotion. So your attention is your devotion. It's what you're attending to. It's what you're giving your time to. So in Arabic, one of the words for it is ihtimam. It's what you're concerned with. It's your hum. It's what preoccupies your mind. It's what your mind is full of. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ja'ala humumuhu hamman wahidan, kafallahu lahu sa'ir al-humum." Whoever makes his concerns, in other words, gives his attention to one thing, Allah will take care of all of his other concerns. What's that? Hamm al-akhirah. It's hamm al-akhirah. So we're living in a time where people's concerns are completely fragmented. And so there's all this mental derangement because people are so distracted. Now, Imam Ali radiallahu anhu said, and it's often attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, and it very well may be marfu' because it is often said with qala Rasulullah, "An-nasu niyam, fa-idha matu intabahu." He didn't say astayqadhu. If they die, they wake up. No. They come to attention. Intibah is nabih, is somebody who's smart, intelligent, because he's focused. He's giving his attention to what's important. And so intibah is what happens when people die. The Prophet ﷺ said, in one iteration, mutu qabla an tumutu, die before you die. In other words, come to attention before you're brought to attention. And in Sahih Muslim, it's "Uddu anfusakum min ashab al-qubur." Consider yourselves already dead. It has the same meaning. In other words, wake up now. And this is what mindfulness is really about. It's dhikr. It's coming to, one of the words for attention in Arabic is also yaqadha. It's to be awake and aware. You're attentive, you're aware. Your mind is present. So already by the 1880s, Nietzsche noted, "One thinks with one's watch in one's hand," he complained. "Even as one eats one's midday meal while reading the latest news of the stock market." This is distraction. Everything is done with the clock. One of the most interesting things about time, and one of my favorite writers, Lewis Mumford, said that when the modern mindset came to dominate, this is what he wrote: "Eternity ceased gradually to serve as the measure and focus of human actions. In its place came the dictatorship of the clock." I mean, isn't that interesting? People used to think about eternity. Their lives were actually determined by their understanding of eternity. And one of the most common things about pre-modern peoples is they mention death a lot. And one of the most notable qualities of modern people and postmodern people is they never talk about death. Why did the pre-modern people talk about death? When I was in the throne room of the former Queen Elizabeth, now the throne room of King Charles, I was taken there by Baroness Udine. She's a Muslim in the House of Lords. So they took me into the throne room. I was getting a tour of the parliament. And they have this throne room. And there was this massive clock given by the French king to the British monarch that had the Grim Reaper on top of it. That's what the clock had. It had the Grim Reaper. In other words, the angel of death was on top of it with his scythe that takes the souls. In all of, if you look, and Dr. Yusuf knows this because he's been working with sundials, in all of the pre-modern sundials, it will say things like carpe diem, many Latin phrases, things like, in one of these hours you will be seized. People saw time as a reminder of their finitude, as the reminder that they were finite beings in temporality. Modern people think they're going to live forever. They don't think about death. And one of the main reasons for this desire for distractibility is because it preoccupies people from thinking about what is inevitable, that they will die. The Prophet ﷺ said, أَكْثَرُ مِن ذِكْرِ هَذَمَ اللَّذَّاتِ. Do much remembrance of the destroyer of delights, death. Not in a morbid sense. This is being unto death. This is embracing our mortality, being aware of it. Marabat al-Hajj every night did death meditation. He would recite poems about death. Shaykh ibn al-Habib in his diwan, tazawwudu akhi. Be prepared for death. فَإِنَّهُ نَازِلٌ, and it's coming. And they used to sing this on a regular basis, to think about death. The Prophet ﷺ was completely aware of the presence of death. The Quran, death permeates the Quran. There's not a page that doesn't have the perfume of death scented on it in the Quran. And this is not morbidity. This is not some kind of morbid or morbidness. It's not morbidness. It's actually to make you aware of the preciousness of the time that you have been given. This is the preciousness of life itself. It's a great gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we waste it away with all of this insignificant concern. There's one of the interesting things about the ancient Greeks is they were actually very concerned about distraction. But what they saw was that it was an inner failure to use one's time on what one claimed to value the most. Their reason for treating distraction so seriously was straightforward, and it's the reason we ought to do so too. What you pay attention will define you. It will define you. What you pay attention to will define you. Seneca wrote a famous short book called The Shortness of Life. He was a great Roman philosopher and one of the notables from Rome. And he talks about, his fellow Romans pursuing political careers. They didn't really care about holding elaborate banquets. They didn't really enjoy baking their bodies in the sun. I mean, it literally says that, sunbathing. Something Europeans tend to do. Other peoples don't need to. And to be honest, I suspect he probably was, right? But the crucial point isn't that it's wrong to choose to spend your time relaxing, whether at the beach or on BuzzFeed. It's that the distracted person isn't really choosing at all. I mean, that's the key. You're not choosing. It's quite the opposite. The word in Arabic is one of my favorite Arabic words, akhtara. It literally means, if you look at it, khayr, it comes from khayr. So akhtara is a form in Arabic which is It's to internalize something. So you're choosing the good. That's what ikhtiyar is. But it's either a real or an apparent good. That's the difference. And so distracted people are not choosing. They're not choosing a real or even an apparent good. They're surfing. Everything will pull their attention. It's called the noonday devil in the old scholastic tradition. Sloth, spiritual laziness, people that don't want to think about the inevitable. One of the amazing things, and this is what I wanted to really talk about, is one of our most important books, and it really is, it had an immense impact on Imam al-Ghazali, is a book known as the Risala of Imam al-Qushayri. This was a foundational book in Tasawwuf. And Tasawwuf is part and parcel with the religion of Islam. You cannot take Tasawwuf out of the religion of Islam without deracinating it, without uprooting it. There are many different types of Sufis. There are many Sufis that went astray, just like there's fuqaha that went astray, there's mutakallimun that went astray. Every science has its problems. But the idea somehow that Tasawwuf, like that mentioned in the Risala of Imam al-Qushayri, wasn't from Islam, nobody would have accepted that, including Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Abdul Wahhab. So, in the Risala of Imam al-Qushayri, he has a chapter called Al-Waqt, time. And he says, حقيقة الوقت عند أهل التحقيق حادث متوهم علق حصوله على حادث متحقق. That time, for the people who have had realization, these are the verifiers, the people that have penetrated the reality of this religion, and they have confirmed that it is true and that if you practice it, you will get the results. In other words, it's falsifiable. This is Popper's argument for a true science, is that it can be replicated. So the muhaqqiqun are the people that replicate again and again the truths that we're told in our tradition. They falsify the religion. They show you that over and over again we do these things and we get the same results. Therefore, it is a science. It's not waham. It's not an illusion. So he says that with the people of tahqiq, it is something that is mutawaham. It's not something tangible. It's something like illusory time. But it's associated with something that is actually substantial. What he means by that is that for us, we don't know if we're going to have the next minute. So I can make my plans for tomorrow. Tomorrow will come for a lot of people, but it's not going to come for everybody. That's the quality that it's mutawaham. And this is why Sahal was asked, متى يستريح الإنسان? When will the human being finally be still? And he says, لما يعرف أن ليس له إلا الوقت الذي هو فيه. He will never be still until he knows that the only time he has is the moment that he is in. And this is why Allah says about the awliya, ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم. In other words, they have no fear of the future. ولا هم يحزنون. And they don't grieve. They have no grief about the past because they are ibnu waqtihi. They're here. They're present. They're mindful. They're fully aware. This is the difference between them and everybody else. They are present. So that is what he's telling us. So he says, a man will say, "Atika ra's al-shahr," I'll come at the beginning of next month. فَالْإِتْيَانُ مُتَوَهَّمٌ. He doesn't really know that. He only hopes he'll see him. وَرَأْسُ الشَّهْرِ حَادِثٌ مُتَحَقِّقٌ. But the beginning of that next month will come. It will come, but you might not come with it. And that is the nature of time. And then he says, I heard Abu Ali al-Daqqaq, one of the great Arifin, say, rahimahullah, الوقت ما أنت به إن كنت بالدنيا فوقتك الدنيا وإن كنت بالعقبة فوقتك العقبة وإن كنت بالسرور فوقتك السرور وإن كنت بالحزن فوقتك الحزن يريد بهذا أن الوقت ما كان الغالب على الإنسان. That's exactly what I was saying earlier. What you give your attention to is your reality. This is exactly what Abu Ali al-Daqqaq said, rahimahullah. The time, the moment, because waqt can be moment, it can be time. Atikum waqtan, like it can. This is the Arabic language. Time is what you are in. If you are in the dunya, your time is the dunya. If you are in the afterlife, your time is the afterlife. If you are in joy, your time is joy. And if you're in grief, your time is grief. And then he says, he means by this that time is essentially what overwhelms the human being. It's your experience. That's what time is. It's human experience. And this is what the clock has taken away from us. The clock is this quantifiable thing. Time is not quantifiable in reality. Time, Allah is time. Allah is, the scholastics, and I think they took it from us. The scholastics called it nuqstans. God is the eternal now. If you look at in Ta'rifat, Imam al-Jurjani says, Ad-Dahr huwa al-an ad-da'im. It is the eternal now. It's the now that stands still. God is time. La tusub ad-dahr fa inna ana ad-dahr biyadi al-layl wa nahar. Do not curse time because I am time. I am time. Some of the ulama interpret it as batinu zaman. It's what the zaman is to the outward, time is to the inward. Anyway, he goes on. It's a stunning thing. He talks about, Imam Shafi'i, he said, I learned two things from the Sufis. الوقت كالسيف إن لم تقطع به قطعك. Time is a sword. If you don't cut with it, in other words, if you're not attentive, it will cut you down. We don't kill time. Time kills us. Whenever you hear somebody say, I'm going to go kill some time, that is a person in complete ghafla. Whenever you hear somebody, Ibn Ata'illah, he said, the fool gets up in the morning and says, what am I going to do today? And the wise man gets up and says, what is God going to do with me today? So he said, and then he said, وَالنَّفْسُ إِن لَمْ تَشْغَلْهَا بِالْخَيْرِ شَغَرَتْكَ بِالشَّرِّ. Your ego is such that if you do not preoccupy it, focus it on the good, it will focus you on the harmful, on the evil, on the bad. Allah. Again, Abu Ali al-Daqqaq said, الوقت مبرد يسحقك ولا يمحقك. Time is a file. It just wears you down. Doesn't obliterate you. It wears you down till there's nothing left. And this is why time is so important. He ends this by saying, كل يوم يمر يأخذ بعضي يورث القلب حسرة ثم يمضي. Every day passes, it takes a part of me. And it's يورث القلب حسرة ثم يمضي. It gives remorse to my heart. In other words, for the time I wasted. And then it continues on. It continues on. And then he says, كأهل النار إذ نضجت جلود أعيدت للشقائق لهم جلود. It's like the people of the fire whose skin is reborn. And this is from the Quran. It says every time the skin gets burnt, Allah recreates it. I mean, this is, we know about these proprioceptors. Now, all the skin has these receptors. That's why people that get burnt really deeply, they don't feel it once they've gone through the skin. So the skin, according to the Quran, is recreated. It's recreated so that the receptors experience it. And then he says, لَيْسَ مَنْ مَاتَ فَاسْتَرَاحَ بِمَيْتٍ إِنَّمَا الْمَيْتُ مَيِّتُ الْأَحْيَاءِ. The dead one is not the one who dies and then finds repose. Rather, the dead is the dead among the living. وَالْكَيِّسُ مَنْ كَانَ بِحُكْمِ وَقْتِهِ. The intelligent one is the one who's mindful of his time. He's giving the time its due. إن كان وقته الصحو فقيامه بالشريعة وإن كان وقته المحو فالغالب عليه أحكام الحقيقة. So he's either in the haqiqah or in the sharia, depending on what time it is. So these are very high meanings. And Imam Sidi Ahmed Zarruq, he says that he says people يطالبوا على حسب الحال. They should be looked at according to their station. So what is asked of the people who are content with being common people, we should all aspire to rise up to be higher than our position. And common people is not the street sweeper. The street sweeper might be a knower of God. So common people in the Western understanding are people that don't have degrees and haven't gone to college and haven't gotten PhDs and things like that. Very often, those are the most common people.